We have a great panel today, and I'd request all the panelists to introduce themselves, starting in alphabetical order with BB.
Yeah, hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's such a pleasure to be working with Vandana and Jupiter 360 for the last year or so, ever since she started this organization. And the progress that she has made is very, very, very impressive. As you rightly said, the impact that this Jupiter can create to billions of people around the world is tremendous. And my name is BV Jagadeesh, and I'm based out of Silicon Valley. And I arrived here about 40 years ago, and born and brought up in Bangalore, although born in a small village called Bagalur. The B stands for Bagalur, which is where I was born, and got educated in Bangalore and Bombay before I came to the US. And I started my first company called Exodus Communications back in 1993, which we took it public in 1998. And I started my second company called NetScaler, which got acquired by Citrix in 2005. And I was with Citrix for a couple more years after that. And then I started my own angel investment firm called KAAJ Ventures. And so we have a bunch of these initiatives now, and the one that you see right now is called SV Quad, the Silicon Valley Quad. A bunch of us have come together to do an angel syndicate to invest in next generation entrepreneurs, and we invest close to $2.5 to $3 million in each of these companies. So that's a little quick background of mine.
Thank you, BV. We go to Lalit.
Thank you, Navneet ji. Good evening, all. Good evening in India, good morning, and good afternoon at other places. So I'm Lalit Mohan, working as President and Chief Operating Officer as the SBI Foundation. State Bank of India, everybody knows, is the largest bank, public sector bank in India, and amongst the 50th largest banks in the world. And we are a CSR arm of the State Bank of India. I am here for the last 1.5 years. I'm a career banker, more than 30 years of experience in different facets of banking. If you say financial inclusion, if you say agricultural banking, branch operations, and into the MSME part of the banking. And I've seen every east, west, north, south corner of the country. So CSR, as a banker, we were doing since 1970s as the integral part of the State Bank of India. But this is now a dedicated arm of the CSR for the bank. And with our flagship programs in every SDGs, from SDG 1 to right from the 70, we have touched so far more than 20 million lives so far in the 7 years, short period of 7 years. And I think we have when I say so, I think we are thankful to the board, which is headed by the chairman SBI, and our very, what we say, that partners at the ground, but the civil society organizations, and few of them are present here. 17,000 feet, we are already associated, and I think amazing work what Sujata is doing. So, and glad to know the work each and every organization is doing. Mr. Anish and other Buddha Fellowship earlier, and the earlier panel, they were describing their work. So I'm feeling quite amazed to be in the illustrious company of all. And this is in short about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lalitji. Thank you very much. The State Bank of India CSR Foundation must be one of India's largest.
So, yeah, last year we have near about $25 million of fund, and this time more or less the funds remain and so. But I think if you talk about the foundations, so bigger foundations like Tata Trust, and they are working since more than 100 years. But we are targeting to be one of the top 5 foundations by 2025. That's the vision we are having.
Wonderful. That should happen. Pearl, your turn.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pearl Tiwari, and I am basically a development professional. I am in Mumbai, in India. Always been in Mumbai, studied here, did my master's in development studies, and then have worked for the first 12, 13 years of my career right in the development sector across special children, across rural India, issues related to urban spaces. And then I ventured into trying to get into a corporate. I've been with the Ambuja Cement for about 22 years, when I realized that there was money with the corporates and they were grappling with dealing with their community issues. And I felt that as an organization in a manufacturing sector, there was so much that an organization could do. So I really ventured in with a view that I would stay here for a few years, but here I am still. I helped this company set up and grow the foundation. I'm the CEO of the foundation today. I've been for the last many years now. And we've completely committed ourselves to rural India. So we started around the plant, the manufacturing geographies of the plant. But today we are an independent implementing organization, which is trying to bring in a lot of collaboration from other and convergence from government, from other corporates who want to do this, who share the vision of rural India on some of the issues that we work with, such as water, livelihoods, working with the farming community. So we are right out there. In our foundation, we today have about 1,500 people on the ground actually conducting the work that we do. And we are now in 12 states across about 55 districts of India. So we're an independent entity today working entirely as any other large development organization on a very integrated model of rural development. I'll stop here in the interest of time.
So Pearl, India is one of the few countries in the planet with a wonderful CSR program for giving 2% of net profits if you're a Section 135 company with minimum revenue, gross revenue, net profit. So right. You think the government's gamble of 2014 is paid off, or it's still work in progress?
Well, I would say anything is work in progress in India if it's just 8 years old, right? But I'm a big believer of this law. I think it's a good move. I think every company which does good business also impacts its communities in whichever way it may impact it. We as the manufacturing sector were definitely impacting rural India, both positively and negatively. And we believe that, if the progress can take place together and if we can mitigate our impacts by really working together with the people of that area who need the development, I think that's a good way to go. However, I mean, I'm very happy that in the last 1.5 years, the law has actually brought in a little more seriousness on impacts and bringing in what the money that is getting spent and how that impacts. This is something that since we've been doing this well before the law, our foundation is about 30 years old now. We've realized that talking with data and talking with impacts can really make it evidence-based practice on the ground, but also we are able to show back impacts to whoever the funders are. So that's something that we've learned, and I think we're doing relatively well for our funders.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sakina.
Hi, everyone. Glad to meet all of you virtually. Good to hear a lot of people working in the space of development. And I'm no different. I'm also part of the development sector, though I'd say I started my professional career with the development sector. 8 years of my professional life was within the development sector and working in different areas of healthcare, disability, advocacy, good governance in non-profit sectors. And then moved to the corporate sector, heading CSR for different corporates, Fortis, Bharti Infratel, Philips, and now with Bosch. I am the CSR head of Bosch Limited in India, and I'm also the head of Bosch India Foundation. So our work is basically can be divided into two major sections. One is completely on skill development, very hardcore programs on skill development and promoting employability. And the other part is on integrated community development, which includes healthcare, education, environment, and other community-related issues. So we have been, the foundation has been there since 2008, much before the law came into force. And it has been doing majority of the work in rural spaces, around 220 plus villages we have been able to cover and impact through different interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakina. So if there are 160 million US workers and 16 million workers work for the charity world, it's almost the largest employment sector in the country after the United States government. And if there's 500 million workers in India, in an ideal society, 50 million should be working for a nonprofit. And right now the number is less than 2 million. So not only, the beautiful thing about the charity world, as all of you know, is somebody else's money, somebody else starts an organization, somebody gets hired, and somebody else gets the benefit. And if you think about what's going to happen in this planet 100 years from now, when everything's going to be free, what are human beings going to do? And the number one job is going to be, human beings are going to be working for an NGO, helping people that need help, older people, and so on and so forth. US today is 340 million people. 1 out of 3 people born in US today will live to be 100. So 100 years from now, the population will be 600 million. 200 million people over the age of 100. So Rite Aid and CVS and all these pharmacies are going to expand their hallways for wheelchairs to pass. So a lot of work ahead. So I know you've all been involved in raising money and doing great work. And I always feel that raising money is very difficult, but spending it is harder. There's lots of causes, and money doesn't move, but doesn't always work. It needs a lot more things to happen. So I'm going to ask all of you one question, and we'll go in the same alphabetical order as before. And the question, Vivi, is, if you are a CEO of an all-purpose charity in India, and somebody gives you $1 billion to spend for charity purposes with one condition, you have to spend $1 million a day for the next 1,000 days. How would you use it?
No, very, very fascinating question and a great thought process as well. If I just look at myself and many others similar to me, right, coming from a middle class, lower middle class kind of family background, the one and the most important thing that made a difference to all of us, and if you ask that question, almost unanimously, the answer would be the education that we got. So the education we got is what actually helped us to transform from wherever we were, right, from an economic perspective and otherwise, while growing up to where we are today, is what actually made the difference. So because of that, we have taken a strategy in helping the nonprofit and working with the nonprofit very intimately at the entire spectrum of education, starting from ground level at the kindergarten or lowest level, primary level, into high school, into college education, into creation of jobs, which is what Vandana was talking about later on as well. So all our investment, 90% of the investment that we make in nonprofit organization pretty much starts from the ground level, where you feed the midday meal programs. And in fact, you know, as a kid, when I was growing up, there was no concept of midday meal. And I could actually see children dropping out and being pulled back into child labor by farmers and from the local people. And this midday meal has really helped to attract children back into the school. Then comes this dilapidated school, as you saw in the video that Jupiter presented. So we have this nonprofit organization called One School at a Time, where we go after the government schools that were built almost 75 years ago, which are in very bad shape. And what we learned was that when the school infrastructure is bad, then parents will start pulling these children out of the school and put them back into child labor. And we don't want that to happen. So because of that, we are focusing on building the infrastructure for these young kids up to the high school level. And then we realized that getting into higher education is what actually leads to a better job. So because of that, we have now focused on providing the scholarship, especially for the underprivileged and more so for children who are coming from the rural part. Because we believe that talent can exist anywhere, and it's our job to help tap into that talent and provide an opportunity, a fair opportunity for everyone, whether they are in urban or in rural, and more so from rural, because I come from rural as well, and provide the scholarship for these children so that when they get that first job after their higher education, you can actually see, I've seen personally myself, that you have now pulled one family out of poverty cycle, right? And then comes the next level, which is at the IIT level or at the Indian School of Business level. This is where, if you invest, these are the people who help create the jobs for all of these kids who get that education, get that degree, and come out of the colleges. And you need somebody to create the job for all these people. So our whole strategy is to look at the entire spectrum of education from the lowest level to the highest level, and work with nonprofit organizations that provide the necessary things to ultimately pull people out of poverty cycle. And I've seen it personally myself, that this happens. The education actually pulls people out of poverty cycle. And that's what our focus has always been. And that's where I would take this money that you're going to give me, $1 billion, and put that into this education segments, which will benefit lots of people.
Thank you, BV. Your first company that became one of the most popular companies in the United States. And I also made money buying and selling Exodus stock, like every Indian in the United States had your stock. And I remember the joke was that, why aren't you buying Exodus? It's going to double every few months, which it did for a while. And do you know, I don't know if you've forgotten the meaning of the word Exodus, but the dictionary meaning of Exodus is mass departure of people, especially immigrants. So
the reason why we coined that term, there was a lot of thought process that actually went behind. The business that we were in was actually moving data from our data centers into the consumers, billions of people around the world. So the thought process behind the name, even though Exodus really means moving away, this is actually moving away of the data from our data centers into the consumers. That's what it meant.
Wonderful. And now you're talking about the exodus of moving people, graduating them with education. That's
right. Good point.
Lalit, $1 billion, what are you going to do?
Yeah, so I want to start my statement with the fact that India has pushed back poverty in a big way the last 15 years. 415 million people have come out of poverty, but still it is a home to the most poor people in the world. And roughly 16% of our population lives in poverty. That is huge number, 230 millions. And out of these 230, 97 million are children. So with this huge money, $1 billion, 1 billion per day, we want to create a drastic change in the lives of these 97 million children who are the future of the country, future of the world. So if we talk about the economic progress of the country, we are doing very well, but there is a huge contrast, huge divide between the country, between the have and have nots. And when we talk about the India's fifth largest economy, and by 2047, it is going to become the third largest economy in the world with $40 trillion size. But when we saw the living standards of these poor people, so it becomes quite contrast. So $1 million a day definitely going to make an impact in the lives of these 97 million children by imparting them. I somewhat concur with Jagadeesh, what Jagadeesh was saying, providing them education, providing them good health with nutrition, and improving standards of living of their families by providing them basic needs, like they didn't have a house. So a small house can be constructed in 10 lakhs rupees in India. So all these factors, if we work on these SDI parameters, where economic parameters, India is doing well. If we talk about human development index parameters, India is very lowly ranked, 136 ranks out of 193 countries in the world. So definitely this money is going to make an impact. And after 1 year, we can say we have brought out these 97 million children out of poverty, out of illiteracy, and their families with some skilling, they will be able to earn something and then make a sustainable living thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, Lalit. Pearl.
Well, I'd say that I'd go with our experience of the last so many decades that we've been doing work in rural India. And that is that while there are many, many areas that one really needs to work on, and all of these are equally important. So don't get me wrong, that education or health, all of this is extremely important to do. But we've learned in our journey that if you solve for water, that is really crucial in rural India. Most of India still gets its occupation on agriculture, and drinking water is a serious, safe drinking water is a serious problem in rural areas today. There is no part of India where there is no water problem. I mean, even if there is good water, the quality of the water may be really very bad. So there is enough and more to do in water. And the way I would look at it is, if it is a coastal region, I would solve the problem of water with salinity ingress mitigation. If it is an arid area with maybe a sandy strata, we would look at water conservation and harvesting in ponds and surface water and cleaning that up and all of that. In the hills, we would look at watershed. So there are enough and more solutions today that are found for rural communities, where if you solve for water, and that's our belief, that both drinking water and water for livelihoods really changes and transforms the society into the prosperous society that we all want. And core to all of that in our learning has also been that this cannot be done without people participating themselves and doing this. So there's a lot of awareness, training, capacity building, investment in all of that, that really becomes very, very important. Besides the fact that India already had traditionally some very, very good structures in place, which we've forgotten about. So there is a way to revive those traditional structures. In Rajasthan, we had the khadeens, which used to give a bumper crop because of a kind of a bunding that was done in the fields. Or there are check dams and ponds and all kinds of structures, step wells and bowdies. So there, I would spend that money in solving for water, and hoping to continue work on the other areas where, because you've solved for water and you've made women more productive, you've freed them from the drudgery of just getting water, you've got the girls who are otherwise following just the mother to collect water for the family, to be actually in those schools that all of you are going to build. So I would be very happy to really see water getting solved and then working towards productivity and livelihoods and all of that alongside water. And then, of course, there are a whole bunch of other things that we would do. But I think that all of this can only be done if, we really collaborate as a society. And I think there's enough and more we've learned that we can learn from each other. And that collaboration and partnership is the way that we've built our foundation. And I would continue to do that with the $1 billion that you're going to give me very soon, Vandana.
Yes. very soon. Thank you. Sakina, what are you going to do with $1 billion?
Well, this is a tough question that that is normally not asked, that you have the money and what you're going to do, because it's very difficult to decide between the projects and the programs that you do. It's very difficult to decide what intervention that you would want to choose amongst the rest of that you do. For us, skilling stands apart. It stands apart because we do skilling in every space that we work in. We have skilling to improve employability. We have skilling to improve education. We have skilling to improve healthcare. And we use skilling to improve even the environment space that we work in. So I think skilling for us is a crux where we would want to spend as much as possible. If I say skilling in education, the skilling that you provide, the skills that you provide to a teacher remains endless with her. And it continues to be given to the students that she would teach year after year. Skilling in the space of healthcare, if you create healthcare staff, if you care HR resources in the healthcare, and you skill them to be trained to not only use their skills in the urban spaces, but rural as well. So that is going to take care of the healthcare issues. Similarly, in the environment, if you're able to teach farmers, if you're able to teach people who are in the environment space, how to conserve our environment, how to make sure that we are doing the production is high, at the same time, it reduces the carbon footprint. I think we have kind of met our goals. So for us, it's always an integrated community development. It's always stems from skilling and goes into different directions and caters to different thematic areas. So for 1 billion, definitely skilling becomes the crux, but it reaches out to other areas as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So Vandana, you've been in this charity circuit for a long time, and I know you know it's hard to raise money, but harder to spend it. So if you had access to $1 billion, how would you spend it?
I think the question would be $1 billion, but $1 billion is still a very relative concept. I think it should be, how do you invest in 8 billion people? Because your population of India, like you're talking about, is not a liability. We should consider it as an asset. So invest in the 8 billion people, but the 1.5 billion, 1.4 billion that are living in India, that is what the number is that we should look at. Let's make sure that we invest in children. They are our future leaders. Make sure that they are trained as political leaders to do what's right for the country. And more than that, I think when we look at everybody's work that we are doing right now, and we look back at what the learnings have been and what our aspirations and goals are, I think it's very important to be present, in where you are right now, and figure out where this potential is. I think children are our highest potential. If you say, here are all these things that we could possibly invest in, I would invest in children. They are our future leaders. They are our future scientists. They are our future nation builders. They can also be the other way. They could also be the ones that could be the destructive side. And it is up to us to be present and saying that if we do that, if we invest in children, if we invest in the charities and the nonprofits that are working towards making children productive citizens, that is where the whole mandate should be. That is where the global vision should be. And I say, there are probably about 300 million children in India. I'm sure our panel would be able to correct me on that number. But again, the number becomes irrelevant after you look at what the amount of work there is to be done. So I would take that $1 billion, I would invest it in children and hope I get an ROI of at least 100 at any point with any organization that we work with. But thank you so much for this panel, for being with us.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you for doing all the great work you're doing and for injecting Jupiter into planet Earth. Thank you, Bibi. Thank you, Lalit. Thank you, Sakina. Thank you, Pearl, for participating.